All right, what is up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Chris, and today I have a very special guest coming on with me to talk about this one topic that I've been, kind of wanting to talk about for pretty much a good while here. I have Bill Meltzer, excuse me, writer for the Flyers for NHL.com, also writes for Hockey Buzz. Bill, how are you? Thanks for doing this. I appreciate you coming on.
I'm doing great, Chris. Chris, how about you?
I'm doing good. Again, I appreciate you coming on. So let's, this could be kind of I guess you could call it a controversial topic. I'm not really sure. But, I've been thinking about this for a while. And there are, some guys that kind of look at this, maybe these guys could get in. If not, maybe it could be, a couple years down the line. But one thing I wanted to talk about here is, can Claude Giroux make the Hall of Fame as of right now? I mean, as of, today's date, November 11th, 2020, can he make the Hall of Fame? Kind of just to start off, I mean, my answer right now is probably a no. And to me, I think it's just because of he doesn't have as big of a resume as he probably would in a couple years if he were to make it. I think in just the way that the Flyers have been going recently and things like that. I think if he wins a Stanley Cup, I think it's honestly a guarantee. With the years that he has left in his career, he's already over 800 games played. I think he will get the 1,000 game mark. He's up there. He leads the Flyers in many categories, and just from games played to points, assists, things like that. So Bill, like, what are your thoughts? Do you think Giroux can make the Hall of Fame as of right now?
Well, I mean, in terms of the team Hall of Fame, absolutely,
Hmm.
that's a no-brainer.
Right.
In terms of the Hockey Hall of Fame, I think G kind of falls into a similar category to where Brian Propp, who is not in the Hall, they're different position, you know, not exactly comparable players, but if you look at, if you look at Propp's career, that's a guy who was a five-time NHL All-Star, one of the top goal scorers. Of course, Giroux was more of a playmaker, one of the top goal
Right.
scorers in his era. Played
Hmm.
in five Stanley Cup Finals with three different teams. Um, but where Proper has fallen short is that Brian never had a 50-goal season.
Right.
He never quite got to 100 points in a year. He
Yeah.
never won a major award in the league, and for all those trips to the finals, he was never on a team that won. Those
Right.
that went all the way and won the cup. Those are the kind of things that Hall of Fame voters look at.
Yeah.
Now if you look at Giroux, he was a finalist one time for the Hart Trophy.
Mm.
Absolutely, a couple of years ago when he got his 100-point season, 2 seasons ago at this point.
Yeah.
To me, he was the most deserving guy, with all due respect
I
to Taylor Hall, and
I
you
believe it
know,
was too.
but unfortunately, when the voters consider it, they're going to see that he finished fourth, and
Right.
that to me was a travesty. But
Hmm.
that unfortunately was what it was. Um, he went to the finals once as a young player.
Yeah.
Had outstanding playoff numbers until 2016.
Yeah.
His last three playoff runs have come up a little bit short.
Right.
Having not played beyond the second round in any year since that first final works against him. He's always been more playmaker than goal scorer, but he's never had the gaudy goal scoring numbers that
Right.
catch eyes.
Hmm.
So I would agree with you that if the Flyers win a Stanley Cup with Giroux, I think that puts him over. I think
I
if
do
he,
too.
I think if he has at least one more huge year,
Yeah.
another year of 95 points, which is going
Yeah,
to be hard
if he
to do.
gets like the 90 to like the 105 point mark, I mean, that's pretty much a no-brainer right there.
Yeah, I think a second season like that in his 30s
Yeah,
put some in that range. Right now, I think he
right.
falls just a little bit short.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I feel like with the way that he's progressing and things like that. I know you made the article on the 5 records that he can break going into this year. With the Flyers and their organization. And one thing I know you said it before on Flyers Daily with Jason Martinez too is that G is not necessarily the guy that you can replace that well, and it's hard. I kind of think it's the same thing with Voracek too. I mean, they're two guys. If you get rid of them, and there's many fans that want to say get rid of the core. I don't really even know if it is a core. I mean, it's only a handful of guys that they say that is the core, but that's a whole different story for a different day. But I kind of think that Giroux is one of those guys where like he's very hard to replace, and I think, as you said too, he's been more of a playmaker. I think there's many fans that kind of get, I guess they're just misconstrued with just the way that he's not necessarily a goal scorer. He never really was.
No, absolutely. And same thing with Voracek too. Always
Yeah,
been more of a playmaking winger than a goal scoring winger.
right.
G did have the 130 goal year. That was his career season 2 seasons ago. But you look at how like clockwork he gives you 50 assists a season,
Right.
most every year.
Mhm.
And you look at his career points per game, and what's relatively, I mean, it's players from the 80s up to the mid 90s points are more plentiful around the league.
Yeah.
For a lot of Giroux's career, it's a lower scoring era. If you look where he ranks in the league in terms
Yeah.
of first, certainly in terms of assists, but also in terms of overall points. He was one of the top 5 players of the 2010s
Yeah.
around the league. I
Hmm.
mean, I think that's why this discussion should be had in the first place as
Right.
to where he ranks among the offensive players in the NHL. Maybe maybe for maybe at any given time he was, except for maybe that. I think the second half of the year he was a finalist for the Hart Trophy. You could say he was top two, top three. Certainly his 100-point season,
Right.
top player in the league offensively. But he's always among the best, and he's a player who's had durability
Mhm.
too.
Yeah.
No matter how talented you are, you can't help your team if you're not playing, right?
Yeah.
And Giroux plays through a lot. I mean, he
He
doesn't
does.
miss.
No, he
So
he hasn't missed many games. I mean, it's been a while. I mean, the last games, I mean, really the biggest stretch of games that he's missed, going back to 15, 16, he had 78 games. He missed 4 games that year. 14, 15, he played 81. He missed 1 game. I mean, there's many times where he has missed, minimal amount of games. And just to kind of break down the stats a little bit, I mean, his rookie year, he plays 42 games, puts up 27 points in 08, 09, pretty solid year there. His first really full season in 09-10, the cup run, again, 82 games played, puts up 47 points. And then, he also had, and right there, that's 20 more points than the year before. And, as you said in the playoffs, when he took, that third line role that he had with, playing with guys like Asham and things like that. His breakout year after that, he puts up 76 points in 10 11 at 23 years old. 25 goals, 51 assists, takes 82 games. He makes his first All Star game in Carolina. Then, in the 11-12 season, has a 93-point year. That was his highest mark until 17-18 when he had 102. He was really playing good that year, 28 goals, 65 assists, makes his second All Star game in Ottawa. He gets on the cover of NHL 13. And again, really after this year, going into the lockout year in 2012-13, he had the huge expectation of when, Peter Laviolette had said he was one of the best players in the world. So I think that might be where many people are kind of like, they kind of just, I think a lot of people expected him to be like a Sidney Crosby because the way that he played against him in that 2012 playoff run, I think that's what a lot of people expected going into the next year.
no, absolutely. And that was just just his A+ game at exactly the
Right.
right time.
Hmm.
And also the 2010 playoff run too, which was his coming out as an NHL
Right.
star. I mean, he really stepped up in the playoffs. I mean, he scored an overtime goal in the Stanley Cup Finals that year.
Yeah. Yeah. In game 3. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that and that was kind of his arrival as a star in the league. And I also think too, you know, it ultimately comes down to how the team does.
Right.
And I don't think it's fair to hold against hold against Giroux, or hold against Voracek or
Yeah.
Couturier the
Hmm.
fact that 4 years of their career were on a team that was rebuilding.
Right.
And
And that's
yeah,
And to me, I think that's the biggest thing because I'll have conversations with my dad. He'll be like, "Well, he's been through 4 coaches and this and that." I'm like, he's like, "How long has he had to see?" I'm like, "But dad, like, you got to realize, like," and it's funny, like, I say it like this, like, you know, like, and I'm just gonna be blunt with you here. Like, they were bad. I mean, they were not trying to, make the playoffs. They did by the skin of their teeth at times. I mean, they really were just not a great team. He didn't have many guys to build around. And then, there's people that harp on him for just the way he's played in the playoffs, and things like that. I mean, the Rangers series, when that was kind of a series that really could have went either way. The Flyers could have actually ended up winning that series. They couldn't really get any scoring from those guys. So, I mean, I look at it in many different ways. And it sucks because I feel like that's one of the biggest problems that I have, to be honest with you, and that's why I get so like aggravated over it because it's like I know that, it's tough when you have, so long where you have literally guys on your bottom six that just cannot necessarily do anything for you. I mean, they're not putting up points where it's completely different now. I mean, the Flyers this past season have had guys in the bottom six and the fourth line that could score. I mean, it happened in the playoffs at times. So, I mean, it was really, they were relying on, first and second line for a long time. So, it's tough when you have to constantly deal with that. But, just going back to the points there, he gets the captaincy in 12-13 lockout season, plays 48 games, plays all 48, and he's point per game season puts up 48 points. In 2013-14, again, this was the year the Flyers made the playoffs. Him, Simmons, and Voracek pretty much relatively carried the Flyers to the playoffs. Steve Mason was also pretty good that year as well. He had 86 points in 82 games. He was also third in Hart voting that year. And I believe Sidney Crosby won that year as well. And second, I believe, was Ryan Getzlaf. In 2014-15, the Flyers, they were very bad that year. They had, I believe it was 10 road wins for majority of the year. But him and Jake were honestly like a top three duo for majority of that year. He had 73 points in 81 games played, and he made the All-Star game in Columbus. And then going into 15-16, 78 games played, very good year as well. Giroux, Simmons, Voracek, Gostisbehere, they all had very good seasons. They make the playoffs. Giroux puts up 22 goals, 45 assists, 67 points. He makes the All-Star game in Nashville. So 2 straight All-Star games there. Third in Hart voting the year prior to those 2 All-Star games. But going into 16-17 here, Bill, it's tough because this is probably his worst year. He puts up 14 goals, which was kind of a little odd because, again, he was always really looked at as that 20 to 25 goal scorer around there. And he puts up 14, 44 assists for 58 points. And the Flyers were not that great that year either. They did not make the playoffs. That was also the least amount of shots on goal he had since 10-11. So, kind of just going off of that, it was tough. And then, as we said, he breaks out in 17-18, has 102 points, follows it up in 18-19, 85 points in 82 games. And then this past year plays all games, and he's 53 points. So, again, it's tough, but, kind of just to go off, those last couple years, it's kind of tough if you kind of go back to that time.
Oh, absolutely. And I think you can even roll it back to the 2016 playoffs, which was the first really rough playoff he had.
Yeah.
2014, he had 6 points in 7 games, I think in that Rangers series.
I think so, yeah.
And really could have had more. Just played into some tough luck. He was easily and consistently the Flyers' best player.
Yeah.
In the series. And there's nothing wrong with 6 points in 7 games. That's perfectly production wise.
And again, the Rangers team that was very good and ended up going to the Cup final that year too.
They were an outstanding team. I mean, that series, Mason and the top line basically got them to a Game 7.
Yeah. I mean, they also had guys like Jason Atkinson at the time too.
Right, who stepped up, at some key times. But you take it to 2016, which was a tough series. Flyers got that to 6 games.
Yeah.
Really had no business even going 6 games. That was a series. Weber stole 2 games in that series.
Right.
Remember that Couturier separated his shoulder in Game 1. So
right.
a tough task became virtually an impossible task when they lost him for the series. Giroux was playing through a core muscle issue, needed surgery, like a groin surgery, and Gostisbehere as well. And the type of surgery that they needed is the kind that takes a lot of players half a year to a full year to recover from. To me, that was really the issue the next year with him. He couldn't get separation.
Yeah. And it's funny now that you say that. Now I remember that. Now I remember them saying, now it makes me think, for a while there, it looked like he just always looked awful for a majority of that year. And then now that you say that, it reminds me why.
Yeah, and it's many players have had that. Jamie Benn had that, and just as one obvious example, and it's just a common thing. It's not an excuse for the guy. It's just it takes players half a season to a full season to get back to their custom level. The year after that, again, it's this big bounce back career year. It helped him, I think, a good deal to move from center to wing. That took some wear and tear off of him over the course of a season. And he's continuing that level. Even this past year, which was, offensively a little bit of a down year, when the Flyers had that stretch of 26 games before the stoppage for COVID,
yeah,
on a tear.
Yeah, he was playing
I
very
think
good.
he had 18 or 19 points over the last 15 games before the
Yeah.
stoppage. So he was really starting to hit his stride when as the stretch drive was approaching. And
Yeah, he
then
was
then you
scoring a lot during that 9-game winning streak. He had a couple goals versus the Rangers, the 2 goals versus Buffalo. I mean, and that's just off the top of my head.
yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. And a game, I mean, just consistently.
Yeah,
Multi-point games on most nights and at least a point virtually every night. He looked like the Giroux of the season before that.
right.
And then for whatever reason, for whatever reason, just did not really click for him in the postseason.
Yeah. And I feel like that was the case for a lot of guys. I mean, we really could sit here and just nitpick like a bunch of different guys and things like that. But I mean, really for majority of it, I mean, it's tough when you don't play for, 4 or 5 months. I mean, it's hard.
Yeah, particularly for older players. I think it takes them some time. They had all of one exhibition game. That it was
Yeah.
more of a tune up than anything else. They had the one game against the Penguins, but then you were in the round robin, whatever, which were I mean the round robin games were still not quite playoff intensity. I mean, I
Yeah.
think you almost survived
They
that.
were pretty much like glorified exhibition games at that point.
And they were. I mean, it was really nice to go 3-0 in those, and I
Yeah.
think it set expectations to a level that the team was ahead of where they really were. Going into that Montreal series.
Mhm.
But I think that was a team wide issue. But you don't give somebody a total free pass either. I think the Flyers needed more out of Giroux. They needed more
Out
like
of really everybody, honestly.
out of everybody certainly. But when their backs are really to the wall in Game 5 of that Islander series, that was Giroux's best game of the postseason,
It
and they
was.
needed him to duplicate that in 6 and 7. Nobody had it in Game 7.
No.
Nobody in the entire team had it in
Mm-mm.
Game 7. It would have been a whole different story though if Giroux could have brought that in those other games. You do look to your veterans, your leaders. He's the captain of the team, so I mean, I don't think he gets a total pass on that. But again, I think it's a team wide issue. When you look at the weight of his career, recent years, and the bulk of it too. We're talking about points, but could you name 3 better faceoff guys in the NHL than Giroux?
Uh, maybe. I mean, if I could, it would have to be the top guys: Crosby, McKinnon, guys like that. I mean, that's probably it.
Yeah, and so that's a crucial area.
Mhm.
For a lot of his career, he's been a PK guy.
Right.
And so the Flyers have been able, as they've been able to put more depth on the team, to be able to take some of those burdens off of his shoulders, so he doesn't get burned out by the time late February rolls around, and that's crucial going forward too, because when you have older players like that, you want them at their best in the postseason. You don't want to burn all your capital, halfway through the season.
Yeah.
So, but he's a guy who's generally held up well. I think that I think if you looked at the bulk of his career, I would say on a league wide basis, I think he's actually been a little bit underappreciated.
I think he is too. And seriously, you'd honestly have to consistently look at it year by year and kind of break it down like we just did. I mean, and
Yeah,
and, and it kind of shows that he's really underappreciated. But Bill, seriously, I really appreciate you doing this. It was a great time talking about this, and seriously, there was nobody better I could have thought of to get on here to talk about this because I knew that you'd have a lot to say about G. So I appreciate you coming on.
my pleasure. Anytime.
All right, guys. Well, that is it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Remember, the podcast and all the articles I do, those links are on my channel. I will talk to you guys all again soon, and let's go Flyers.